Hello, and welcome back to the Futurism at J2 podcast. Today's episode is cryptocurrency and NFTs. So, to begin, what is cryptocurrency? So, cryptocurrency, like the name suggests, is a currency that uses cryptography, which is basically encryption so that only people involved in a certain transaction can know what was sent between them. And it's a decentralized digital currency, so it doesn't rely on banks and it can be traded, so bought and sold, or it can also be used as a currency. And some examples are Bitcoin and Ethereum, as I'm sure you understand, and as I'm sure you've heard of.
Yeah, cool. And essentially the way that we're able to keep track of all of the different transactions using crypto is through what is called the blockchain. Now, what this is what it essentially is a giant ledger, um, where you can keep track of what user sent another user, like the value that one user sent to another user. For example, if I wanted to send Nicholas money, I would it would end up that transaction would end up going in the blockchain. However, it is what's called pseudo anonymous, which means that I might have a username, but it's not directly linked to me. So I can send Nicholas that, but only the people who know the usernames can know who they're sending it to, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, and the way that crypto is actually extremely safe way to keep money, relatively speaking, not talking about inflation or any of that, because it's very, very hard to hack crypto. Um, because essentially what it is, it's digital money, right? And the way that it's verified is through what is called, like I said, the blockchain on the ledger. So each block is one ledger space, right? And within that block, um, each transaction has a serial number that is registered to that transaction, but it also includes the serial number of the transaction prior to it, right? So if you mess with the transaction, like for example, I say, for example, if Nicholas wired me $5 and I go to mess with it, and say that, try and hack it and make it so that he sent me $10, what would happen is it would actually change the serial number of that transaction. And since it's connected to the block prior to it, suddenly the serial numbers wouldn't match. And every transaction that came before that would be invalidated. Um, and the way that it's able to cross reference and check to see if it has been hacked or not, is the fact that the ledger is actually spread out on computers across the world. Nearly, I think, 500,000, I read at this point, have access to the ledger. Um, and what it does is it checks all of those computers, and if this transaction change isn't showing up on any of the other computers, it can tell that it has been tampered with, this transaction, and thus invalidates it, which makes crypto really safe, as far as not getting hacked and having it stolen. Um, and you can actually see every transaction that's being made on the blockchain. You just can't necessarily map it to individual people. And yeah, that's sort of a roundabout explanation of the blockchain.
Yeah, and next up is what sort of has become the baby of these two technologies of both crypto and the blockchain as a whole, which many of you have probably already heard of. It's been a buzzword in many news articles, tons of stuff on the internet, and it's, of course, you probably guessed it, NFTs. And what NFTs basically are is digital tokens of various things. You could find NFTs of videos, you could find NFTs of images, which is probably the ones you've heard of the most as of recently. There's photography, there's a ton of things. And basically, what NFTs break down to are non-fungible tokens, which make up the word NFTs. Basically, these are tokens which are one of a kind, cannot be tampered with, and you, whenever you buy an NFT, are the sole owner of this, which, as some may and some may not understand, you're not necessarily taking ownership of whatever you might be getting an NFT of. That really depends on who is selling the NFT and what the conditions are for that NFT. But in very simple terms, you're basically buying a hyperlink which belongs only to you, which enables you to see a certain piece of art or media or object within the internet, which you are able to buy with cryptocurrencies and ensure that you are the sole proprietor through blockchain technology, making this a super safe and all around good way of buying things. There's also the main purpose of NFTs, which was to originally give back to the creator. So every transaction that is done, a percentage of that transaction will go to the original creator, making it a little bit easier for creators to essentially maintain their way of living. They don't necessarily always have to be creating new forms of media to be able to essentially afford to eat food and live somewhere, making it great for them to create art, give back to the community, and at the same time for a lot of people to be able to get a hold of these pieces and sort of hold them in as assets later on. So that's what a lot of people have been doing. But, there are scams out there, and we'll talk about that soon enough. But just keep a lookout for those. And, yeah, that's pretty much what NFTs come down to.
So I would love to talk more about NFTs. I remember watching this video on YouTube with Keanu Reeves. They basically asked him, like, what do you think about NFTs?
Yeah.
And he just sits there. He's like laughing hysterically at it. I mean, it's pretty easy to laugh at, right? Because in essence, it's a JPEG file, right? And there's like articles, which I'm sure you guys have seen, where it's like, NFT sold for $70 million. It's like, you're paying $70 million for a JPEG file? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
So I'm still on the side where it's like, why? But can you persuade me otherwise? Like, what is the value that NFTs have? Is it just like art, where it's like there's some intrinsic value to being the sole proprietor of this thing, where it's like, I don't know, you're like glorified in a way?
Yeah, I think as of recently, a lot of people have been glorifying what NFTs are, and I'm sure that later on the market will come to be what I think NFTs are truly were supposed to originally be like. But as of right now, we've seen a lot of these other NFT projects, Bored, Yacht, Ape Club. We've seen a lot of these other sort of imitators in a way. And yeah, I think for a lot of those, you are basically just buying a glorified JPEG. And Keanu Reeves has every right to laugh at them.
Do we.
As do we. And the reason for that is that in reality, you don't really have ownership of anything, right?
You don't even own it.
Exactly. You only really the only satisfaction you really get out of an image is to be able to look at it, right? And this is for photography. This is for a lot of different things. The thing with NFTs and a lot of these other projects is that like I said, you're basically buying a link that specifically gives you the access to see an image, but unfortunately, it's not an image that only you can see, right? So a lot of other people can get the same satisfaction out of seeing that image. The only real satisfaction you get is of saying that you own it. So a great analogy could be having access to a garage, right? Of maybe you buy a garage that has a Lamborghini in it, but you can't take it out to drive. You're basically only there. You're the sole proprietor. You're basically the one that has the name attached to that lot. But technically, others can go to that lot as well and see the car and just, take in the architecture, the build that was essentially made to create the car, but not you nor the other people are able to drive it. You basically only have your name there due to you buying it. So there's no real incentive for a lot of people to buy it. I think a lot of people have gotten into the NFT train due to, like I said, a lot of the hype around it and the ability to make money. And as we know, anything out there that quickly gains traction and is able to make you money, a lot of people will go for it, right? But I truly think that NFTs have a place. So maybe you have a favorite artist and maybe they post an unreleased track, right, as an NFT, which makes it so that only the person that has the NFT is able to listen to it. Like, to me, that is a great way to incentivize people to buy NFTs because only the sole proprietor of the NFT would be able to listen to a track. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe if Da Vinci was alive, maybe the next iteration of the Mona Lisa or something that you're the only person able to experience it, right? It gives you at least some sense of uniqueness, whereas other people aren't able to do that.
You brought up a really good example too, with Wu-Tang Clan, I remember, and
Yes.
Martin Shkreli. Kind of the same thing happened there, except it wasn't an NFT. He got a physical copy of the album. But imagine, like, same thing could happen today, right? I mean, Wu-Tang did that as a marketing strategy.
Yeah, and
You
it
know,
was
and it-
hugely successful.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, they made so much more money off of that than they ever would have possibly selling their latest album. So, in a sense, like, yeah, it could really benefit, but I feel like there is definitely like a time and a place for that too,
Definitely, yeah. It's
where it's practical, I guess I mean to say. Because I guess like, there's also like the idea of status symbol, right?
yeah,
Like you can buy an NFT as a status symbol, and I think that's kind of like what it's about.
yeah, and we can see that specifically because of what Twitter has done recently. You know, Twitter has launched their I think Twitter Blue subscription, I believe it's called, where you pay like $2 a month. It gives you a whole bunch of like different little like things that you can do in Twitter. It's not to the point where it's you know, as somebody that doesn't use Twitter Blue is gonna really affect your experience. It's just something for those that use Twitter a lot, you know, just help them. Maybe they're creators, maybe they need more statistics, analytics, things of that sort. But one of the things that you're able to do with uh, Twitter Blue essentially is link your NFT or make an NFT that you own your profile picture, and it'll, I don't know if you've seen this, it'll change it to like a little hexagon, I think, to differentiate you, essentially giving you that status symbol on Twitter. So like you were saying, Twitter has moved in that way where NFTs are being shown as a status symbol rather than bought for really any other purpose.
Yeah.
So another thing, NFTs, you know, I'm thinking of like how art is used in malicious ways, I would say. For example, like money laundering, right?
Of course.
Do you guys think that NFTs could be or are being used for this purpose as well?
Oh, I'm sure.
Absolutely. It's probably
Yeah.
like why they came about in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, like I said, if there's money to be made, people will, for the most part, try to get the most out of it, right? They'll exploit it to the extent that they can, and money laundering is definitely one of the easiest and most logical in a way things to do with NFTs. I mean, they're, like I said, they're still so new that we don't really know that much about them. New projects come and go as they please. And so it's really hard to just pin down what's real and what's not in this, you know, weird intrinsic world of NFTs. So yeah, money laundering can definitely be a thing.
The one thing that's sort of interesting about money laundering with NFTs is that you leave a record and a trace in the blockchain every time you make a transaction. So with money laundering with NFTs, if you get caught even once, if you make a slight slip up, your entire history is somewhere in the blockchain. So I think that would discourage people from laundering money that way, and instead I think I think that it's safer, maybe less convenient, but safer in some sense um to money launder with, say, art, or you know, a seemingly profitable business or other things.
Yeah, totally. And that's actually one of the points that my intro to business professor actually brought whenever we were talking about this stuff. It's the fact that if you really want a type of currency that is untraceable, I mean, nothing is more untraceable than a physical dollar. Like, think about it. You go into the store, you buy a drink with physical dollars. Maybe the drink is like $2. You hand it over to the cashier. You walk out. I mean, aside from the store knowing that a drink was bought, there is no record of you buying it. The cashier probably doesn't remember you. You were just another nameless customer with literally no tracing at all. Whereas NFTs, like you were saying, there's at least some form of record taking place where you're being put down, and people know what transaction took place, even if they don't know necessarily what exchanged hands after the cryptocurrency.
I read a statistic. I think it was significantly less than 1% of crypto transactions have been like the money was being used for illegal purposes, whereas nowadays apparently up to 5% of transactions using cash are used for illegal purposes. So I think it's really interesting that, like, despite the seeming appeal of it, of being able to remain anonymous, people still aren't really taking that chance.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, like I said, I linked this last time we were talking about this to a couple of YouTube videos. I don't know if you guys took the time to watch them, about the whole controversy with Save the Kids token. For you viewers that don't know, Save the Kids was originally supposed to be a cryptocurrency where a percentage of whatever the token's value was to be donated to the Save the Kids Foundation. But in the end, it turned out to be a huge scam with lots of very famous influencers involved, which, made waves around the internet. Just putting more attention to the fact that a lot of these crypto projects, sometimes, even if they aren't necessarily used for illegal purposes themselves, can turn out to be huge scams, which a lot of you viewers should always be wary of, especially with new projects coming along, promising lots of great things, but you have very little to no knowledge of who these people are behind the project and what their real intentions can be.
Yeah, I was going to mention that's one of the big problems with me, or for me, with crypto and NFTs is the legal precedent, right? Like, it's so recent, and, like Max has said, technology moves a lot quicker than legislation does. And so there's not a lot of...
We still have congressmen who don't know what the internet is.
That's what, yeah. I mean, Congress is still behind on, like, Google and Facebook. Like, they still...
I think back
are
to
having
Mark
issues with
Zuckerberg's hearing, where they continually asked him, how do you profit if you don't charge your users? And he kept saying, well, we run ads, Senator.
But yeah, so that kind of gets to my point of it's still kind of an open playing field at the moment. I mean, it's meant to be, right? It's meant to kind of sidestep, the centralized banking government system and really be decentralized. But that also makes it very dangerous in a sense, in that you don't have that kind of security in a way, or like legal kind of, I guess, overlords, like checking what's happening.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of like regulatory issues. So, but yeah, I'm conflicted because, like you said, it could be used for really good things.
Oh,
like,
definitely.
A portion of our transactions will go towards like a conservatory project, or, raising for charity. But there's no way to enforce that. That's the problem. Like, it really could be used for both, really good efforts and then also not so good aims. So
I think that generally, though, crypto is moving in a really good direction as far as legal precedent and that sort of thing goes, because it is so decentralized, right? So, for example, like, I read somewhere that essentially it being decentralized makes it so that nobody really has any kind of power over it, where banks essentially hold unlimited power of the US dollar because they control the flow of it, right, in and out, with, in some sense, lending money to people and that sort of thing, and the government with taxation, right? They sort of regulate and control the flow of money, and banks being greedy and irresponsible are, in a nutshell, what caused the 2008 crash, right? Things like that aren't necessarily going to happen because of people being greedy anymore, right? Because it's decentralized. You now have computers quote, controlling the flow of the money, through the blockchain. So it makes it so that it's decentralized and more equal, kind of in the same way that, for example, um, information was centralized until the internet came along. Then it became decentralized, and everybody had access. Well, most people had access to all of the information from around the world.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing now with money. It's going to be harder to control the flow of it. So yeah, you're sort of losing that security. But in some sense, it gives you a freedom of the people who would want to control the money.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest both positives and negatives of crypto and this technology is it gives the user so much freedom. But at the point where the user themselves have to know what they're doing, right? It gives you a ton of power, but it doesn't give you any training wheels to do it. So you have to go out of your way to research and do what's best for you because, like I said, you don't know who these people are or what they're doing. So you have to look out for yourself. So definitely if you're going into this, do your research, make sure you're well informed because, they're giving you this power, but you have to use it responsibly. If you lose money in a pump and dump scheme, that's kind of on you.
Yeah.
Pump and dump. You might need to explain.
Oh,
what you mean
right.
by that.
Pump and dump schemes. Essentially, like I said, NFTs, specifically cryptocurrencies. A lot of projects have come up. People, say that, oh, this will be the new biggest thing. If a lot of people, contribute and buy it, then the price will skyrocket and everybody will make money. But as you know, with any stocks, that's not the case, right? As soon as somebody buys, the price drops because there's more quantity of the market than there is, need for it. So essentially what a lot of these people will do is make hype around this cryptocurrency, make a lot of people buy it, raise the price of the cryptocurrency, and then the people that have lots of it, and usually these are the people that started it, will then sell all they have, essentially making thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions even in a span of a few hours, leaving everybody else in the dust with maybe you put your savings into this thinking that it was going to be a great, thing. Or maybe it was $1,000, but it was like $1,000 or $100 that you needed to buy books or maybe food. It puts a lot of these people at risk of essentially losing their money and getting left behind by these people who just want to make a quick buck. So that's what a pump and dump scheme. You essentially pump up the price of the stock, or in this case, cryptocurrency, and then you dump it, sell all of it, take the gains, and leave.
Got it. So, all that being said, do you guys think that crypto and NFTs and blockchain, do you think that they're here to stay? Like, is this something, 5, 10, 20 years from now is going to be, just as big or, an integral, like, do you think it will replace the systems that we have? Will it complement the systems that we have? Or will it just kind of fade into the background?
I think NFTs are going to go. I think that they are a product of crypto. And I think that they were sort of they were sort of capitalizing, like the entire hype around NFTs was capitalizing the hype around crypto, right? I think NFTs are definitely going to go because it's very hard for me to see a lot of practical purpose for them. I think they'll have a time and place, but I don't think it will be as common as we're seeing right now. I think crypto is definitely here to stay, and I think it is the future of money transactions.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, I'm not sure if crypto will necessarily take over as the main form of currency around the world, but at the very least, I know that it will help complement whatever systems that we have now, due to the ability of checking that every transaction is correct. The ability for people all over the world to make transactions to each other. Now there's no need for banks to do conversions, which, banks make money of converting dollars into Mexican pesos or like Canadian dollars. There won't be any need for that. A lot of people will have the freedom to quickly exchange money. So I think at the very least, all of these technologies will complement other forms of currencies at the very least, and I also believe that there's a high possibility for genuinely like Bitcoin, a lot of these other more established coins, to make their presence known in a lot of our daily life. There might be the day where we just go ahead and buy groceries with whatever's in our crypto wallets, and that could be very feasible.
So there you go, listeners. So moral of the story is NFTs probably gonna go. Crypto probably here to stay. So definitely don't fall into the hype, I would say. Be wary of everything that's going on. Like, do your own research. Don't listen to necessarily the opinions of others, but really dig into it. Try to understand what the technology is before you try to start investing in it, and definitely be cautious. But that being said, it is probably going to be our future. So learn as much as you can about it. And with that, we hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.
See ya.